I thought I'd take and put some on a pen here and show you how I sand it and what we finish up with. What I finish out with is what they call micro mesh. I will sand it to about 400, and then, let's see, 400, no, 600.
Winter dry.
Yeah, 400, I was right the first time. I'll sand it to about 400, and then I'll start with my micro mesh.
Do you ever use water?
I'm sorry?
Do you ever use water on the sanding?
I do not, no. You can, I've heard you can, but if you look at a pen blank, the ends aren't really sealed. So I'm always afraid water will get back up in there and discolor my wood. At least that's my thought.
I always micro mesh mine wet, and I've never had a problem.
Me too.
Yeah, likewise. Micro mesh is virtually indestructible. You can take and wash it out. This is the second set I've had, no, third set, but I like it so much better than the first two that I had. First two were just cloth back sheets, and they still work great, but when you're turning a piece and it starts to get hot, if you don't have several layers there, it gets pretty warm. That's what I like about the felt pad, the rubber pad that's in those. Okay, well, I guess I will get started here then. If you'll notice, I've got blue paper towels, mechanics towels they're sometimes called. The reason for that is a plain paper towel has so much lint in it that it shows up in your finish a lot of times. This is about the least amount of lint that I've come across on anything, and it works really well for the CA glue. Well, let's get things started sanding here, and we'll get set up. Always taken. I'll start out with like a 150 and get it down to where I want it. Then when I'm on bare wood like this, I always try to go with the grain. It takes out any deep scratches and kind of hides them in with the grain. There's 150. Do 20. You don't have to push real hard on it. All you're trying to do is just take the tops off and flatten it out. If you don't have it where you want it beforehand, you're going to have to use a heavier sandpaper. There's a rag right there. Could you hand me that, please? Thank you. Okay, 320. And 400. Like I say, the process is pretty much the same with the exception on a pen. I will not take and put the sandpaper to it with the CA glue unless it's got a lot of deep crevices in it. And I can flatten it out with that. Now that I'm up to there, Clean it off. See what she looks like. Oh yeah. I'll do a lot of things without glasses, but not CA glue. Thing I like about exotic blanks, they have these bottles, plastic bottles that they sell also with different applicator nibs, applicator tips for it. So if you want something or a special job or have something you want to get really down deep, they've got one that's probably 3-4 inches long if you want to get deep into some of the crevices. But I know woodworkers, they probably use a lot of the regular wood glue. For a wood turner, as far as I'm concerned, CA glue is a must. Okay, when I'm doing this, I just take and put a little dab, just a drop or two, just enough to where I can cover it good. And I'll go over it maybe 2 or 3 times, and then I'll let it set. Just a quick shot of activator. And it's ready to go again. I don't usually use gloves when I'm finishing pens. The only time I use gloves is when I'm either finishing a bowl or gluing the tubes inside of the pens. I will use gloves then because I get glue everywhere.
Use thick CA putting the tube.
I'm sorry?
Use thick CA putting the tube.
I use thick CA glue for gluing that in. You can actually join with this stuff with CA glue, but the only problem is that CA glue has a is real brittle. If you drop it, it'll break. It's got a real low shear strength. So I don't usually use it for putting pieces together unless it's something on the lathe that I need real quick. And I know it's going to be in a fairly decent spot that it's not going to get tore up. There's one. And you notice I never stay on it more than 2 or 3 rubs across it. Just enough to level it out and spread it out and even it out. Good to go. You can actually feel it start to stick before you get off of it. Hi, Bill. Glad you could make it. I was talking to Barry Gross out at the wood show. I says, why don't you show how to do CA glue on your pens out here? He says, because I tried that once. He said I had to have an awful lot of acetone to get those kids' fingers apart.
So how many you got on there now?
Got 3 on there now. You don't want to drench it. You just want to just lightly mist it. That's what causes it to set up. You can put more on it, but it's not going to set up any faster. In fact, it may have to dry out a little before it will set.
Do you ever get bubbles with that accelerator?
Ever get what?
Bubbles?
Occasionally. If you get a bubble, it's not that difficult to get out. You have to sand it down, and if you can get it opened up, a lot of times you can put some CA glue on the inside of the bubble. It will actually adhere to the surroundings of the bubble, and you can't even tell it was there. But if you get some of this stuff in it, believe me, you've got to sand it all the way down and start over. My wife often asks me how I can do this as much as I shape. I said, well, in some cases it helps, you know.
That wouldn't work in quilting.
That wasn't what?
The shaking wouldn't work in quilting.
No.
Yeah, I've heard that. Of course, my wife's a quilter, so
That's what I mean.
she makes some of the prettiest quilts you ever saw. When she puts a point together, it's a point. And if it's not a point, it gets taken apart until it is a point. She gets downright neurotic sometimes on some of them.
Kind of like us.
Kind of like us, right?
Married to a woodturner, what do you expect?
Huh?
She's married to a woodturner, what do you expect?
That's it.
If she wasn't neurotic before, we'll get them that way.
Okay, there's 6.
Now you buy that accelerator in quantities too? A large bottle, is that?
I'm sorry?
You're using the accelerator in a pump spray?
Yeah, I do, yes.
And you buy it in like a liquid bottle?
You can buy aerosol cans and that kind of thing. And it's the same thing. You just want to just touch it. Yeah, I buy it in bulk in a bottle, and I couldn't buy that spray pump, so I bought one bottle of or in fact 2 bottles after that, but I bought 2 small bottles of the accelerator so that just so I'd have the pump. But it's an aerosol mist basically. I mean, it puts it out in a real fine mist from that pump. And that's what you want, is just a real fine mist. You just want enough on there to where it's going to start the reaction, the exothermal reaction. And as thin as it is, you don't notice the smoke and stuff. But if you let it pool up into a bunch, it's going to bubble and smoke and all that good stuff. That's when you start picking up the fumes really bad. Hello there, I found some CA glue.
But this will work just as well without accelerator.
I'm sorry?
This will work just as well without accelerator though. Yeah.
It does. It just takes a little longer for it to set up.
And every time you add a coat, it takes longer than it did the last time.
Right.
And if you put too much accelerator on, it will crystallize on it.
Yeah, it can. Now, one little trick that I found, I used to not do this, but I found that when I didn't do it, I had problems. When you take and CA glue your blank, it also puts CA glue back out here on your bushings. And the problems I was having was I'd go to pull it apart and sometimes it would crack back into my piece. And then I'd end up starting all over again. Pretty much so, anyway. So what I started doing was I started taking a small skew, turn the speed up a little bit, take the point, take the point and put it right down in where the metal meets the wood. And I always do it before I sand it, or at least before I start with the micro mesh. Because it always seems to peel a little back and leave a little hump on the finished piece side. If I do it before I do the micro mesh, I can sand that down and everything's flush when I get done. What that does is create a spot where it will break off to without cracking back into finished product.
You ever use any of those special bushings that make the glue out of that plastic?
I'm sorry?
You ever use any of those bushing or deals they sell that's supposed to keep glue from sticking to them?
I've never used any. I've heard they work pretty well, but
I don't like them.
don't you?
Well, the glue will run over the end, you end up with them glued to your damn pen line.
Ah,
I don't like that.
yeah. Yeah. I like this way. It's worked for me all this time. So ever since I got started turning, so I figure if it'll work that long, it ought to last me a while longer. Okay, so let's start sanding now. Again, I'll start out with usually 220. I forget about the 150 from here on. And I just want to sand it. Just I don't want to push on it because I don't want to make deep scratches in it. All I'm trying to do is level off the top of it. And I'll work it all the way across until I lose that sheen that's on it. You can see a bright sheen and it'll turn to kind of a milky white. I just want to get rid of that. If you sand much past that, then you're going to be sanding it all off. Looks good. Can you see that from there? See how dull it is? That's kind of what you're looking for. And I'll go to 320. And again, just turn it milky white and don't put a lot of pressure on it. The more pressure you put on it, the deeper those grains of sand that's on your sandpaper will cut in. Now for 400. What I like about CA glue though is I can be cutting along and all of a sudden a piece flies off and I'm sitting there trying to find it. And if I'm lucky enough to find it, which usually I can because I try to keep my shop as clean as possible, but there are those times when just like everybody else. But if I can find it, I can actually glue it back in and minutes later I'm back to work. Do a little side with the grain. Now some guys will do it completely through the whole process. Myself, I do it through the 320 because those are my heaviest grits where I'm going to have a tendency to cut into it. Now I start at, I believe it's 6,000 grit. No, it's not 6,000, it's 1,500 grit. Runs from 1,500 up to 12,000. 6,000 is where you start to see a definite change in your finish. You start getting to 6,000 and you can actually see the light bulbs above you in the mirror finish.
How long does that micro-mesh last?
Forever. Like I say, this is my third set, but only because I had that real thin stuff before and it would get hot on me. I can take this and wash it and it's as good as new. In fact, I think Mel gave me this at one of the Christmas parties probably 4 years ago.
What grid is that?
I'm sorry?
What grid do you use now?
This one is, I have to refer to the book. Gives you a scorecard. This one's 1,800. And again, you're not trying to push it in. All you're trying to do is just kind of pull a light, medium to light pressure on it, just to kind of slick off the top. And it doesn't take a long time to do it. Now we're going to 2400 grit. Like I say, you don't want to push hard. The harder you push, the more you mess up your micro mesh. It'll get hot and melt on you, and first one thing and then another. That's how I ruined a couple of these before I figured out I was pushing too hard. You don't have to push that hard. All you got to do is just push hard enough to take the tops off and kind of polish it up. Okay, there's 12,000. Now the paste resistance. I learned real quick to get that extra shine out of it. I always take a scratch remover. In this case, I use that new finish Scratch Doctor for automobiles. Works great. I've used it for years. Gets a little liquidy after it sets for a while, so you got to kind of shake it up so that the grit stays up in it. And it doesn't take a lot, just a little squirt. I think that's the second bottle I've ever bought, and I've made hundreds of pens. Put it on. Now you want to now you can get rough with it. Now you want to polish it up good. In fact, I'll even turn up the speed on it.
Someone out here.
Yeah. Perfect. Couldn't ask for any better. See how that bushing comes off of there? I have had it right there by your foot there, Larry. Thank you, sir. I have had them come off of there. If they don't want to come loose, like this one here, get it out towards the end to where the bushing is still on, and then just kind of work it back and forth, and that'll crack it. And then from here, I'll take a piece of sandpaper flat on the surface, and I'll sand the face of it so that it sits nice and flush against my pen parts, and everything looks great. Aren't any gaps in it. Got a nice finish to your pens, and it demands more money. And it doesn't take near as long as, I don't think, as using some of the other finishes. Any questions? Anything I didn't cover?
Yep. First rule of CA finishing, keep the solvent within arm's reach of the head.
Well, that's true. You're right. You're right. Acetone or some solvent such as that, keep it within reach, because it's inevitable sooner or later you're going to glue yourself together.
First time I did, I dropped one of the bushings, put my hand on the ways and leaned over.
Okay. Anybody else?
Barry Gross had what I thought was a very good hint. I learned from him 3 or 4 years ago at one of the shows. Keep you a little jar, mason jar,
Okay,
full of acetone,
right,
and when your tips start getting messed up, put a new tip on, drop that in the acetone.
exactly. I don't use glass, I use plastic, but I do the same thing.
Yeah.
I've got a little wide mouth jar, and like you say, you just take the lid off, take the tops off, throw it in there, put a new one on, and you're back to going again. And it keeps your tips clean, and you're not constantly buying tips. It's a good cheap way to use your CA glue.
Yeah.
Anybody else? Any comments?
Good job.
Thank you.
The mechanics